So in this video, I'm going to show you some of the major differences between aluminum wire and copper wire. Here are a few of the popular gauges that I use, and I'll just do a little comparison between them. So as you can see, the aluminum often comes in large spools. These ones I purchased on Etsy. I'll link them up below in the description. And so as you can probably guess, the aluminum wire is quite a bit cheaper than the copper wire. Copper wire tends to come on smaller rolls, and I bought a huge quantity of this, and actually at first I didn't think I'd be able to use all this gold wire because it's very, very soft. That's the thing about aluminum, it's super soft, but I ended up finding some good purposes for this wire. So just as for gauges, this one is 0.8 millimeters. They say in the conversion charts that it's 0.8 millimeters is like 20 gauge, but I actually find this one to be more like a 22 gauge when I compare them. Depending on the company, there could be little variations. This one is 1.5 millimeters, which is between 14 and 16 gauge, so probably about a 15 gauge. And aluminum and copper, both, they come in beautiful colors now. When I started making jewelry 30 years ago, it was very hard to get colored wire. This was actually one of the very first colored wires I bought. I bought it in Barcelona, and it is anodized aluminum. The trouble with this one, it's a beautiful color, but it's very fragile. So if you bend it too much, it can just breaks. Probably because the technology might not have been as advanced at that time. There could have been defects in the lots. So that one I use sometimes just for decorative pieces, but I have to be careful because it's very fragile. So just to show you a little bit of the difference. So if we take the aluminum wire, let me just remove these for a minute. I'll get two gauges that are similar. So if we go for the aluminum and we go for the copper here. So to give you an idea, like if you take the aluminum wire and bend it back and forth, it is quite a bit more fragile than the copper. So the copper, you'd have to bend it quite a few more times back and forth to actually get it to break. So that's one aspect of it. And often with the aluminum wire, if I'm in a pinch, I'll just use my pliers to cut it, like the little round pliers to cut it, and it works quite well. Whereas with the copper, it's better to use the wire cutters to cut it. So I'll show you a little bit of the difference just working with the wires. This is the copper, and then if you want to make a spiral, you can just kind of bring it in like this and just wind it with your thumb and your finger. Makes a nice little spiral. And then if you do the same with the aluminum, you can just bring it in and you can just wind it around as well. So they work pretty well the same. They're not too bad. The aluminum that I have, it kinks a lot, so it kind of depends on the type of process that they use to make the wire. But this wire, most of the aluminum wire that you can buy on the market now is very, very soft. So that thin aluminum wire is great for projects like the chaos bead that I used, and I used 3 strands and just wrapped them around. And then also this fun box that I did the base with copper wire, and then I filled it in with the aluminum wire, and it worked quite well for that. So as long as you have a basic structure, you can use this wire as sort of embellishment, and it works quite well. The other thing you can use the aluminum for are these mixed media cards. So if you just have an embellishment made with the aluminum, it's not going to bend out of place because it's secured on the card. And then as for flattening the aluminum wire, this is a fun one that I made where I just made the shape of the cat bookmark, and I was able to flatten this part in a pasta machine. So that was really cool. It's very soft. You could flatten it very well. Whereas with the copper wire, if you were using a thicker copper wire, you would have to hammer it or put it through a rolling mill, which I have one in my basement. Here are a few pieces I used the copper wire for, and This one, it's for wrapping stones. I would highly recommend using the copper instead of the aluminum because aluminum is really quite fragile, and if this bends too much, it could snap off. So definitely the copper for wrapping stones is much better. And this one is actually a hairpin that I made on a recent live stream, and this is the 16 gauge copper wire. This too, you wouldn't want to do this with aluminum because it would be very soft. I actually did one with the aluminum wire, but it's very, very soft, and I kind of strengthened it a little bit by putting some little whiskers on there. But still, I would more recommend for hairpins, scarf pins, larger pieces to use the copper wire. Here's a fun one I did, like a little face, and this one is also the copper wire because you want these to be as solid as possible and for the face to hold its shape as well as possible. I like the aluminum wire because it stays nice and shiny. The copper wire, they now make it in a tarnish resistant, and basically what that is, they put like a little plastic coating on there. So sometimes you have to be very careful because if you work with it too much, it could, like, the coating can scratch off a little bit, but as long as you're careful, it's fine, so it stays a nice color. I love the aluminum wire for earrings because they're lightweight and they don't tarnish, whereas some people find it a little too lightweight, especially if you're trying to do a pendant on a more chunky necklace. So thanks so much for watching the video. Be sure to comment below if you have any other questions about wire art or jewelry making. Subscribe to my channel for lots more wire art and jewelry making tutorials, and hit the notification bell to be notified when I go live and when I post new videos. And if you'd like to share photos of your wire work, be sure to join the Wire Art and Jewelry Makers Club on Facebook. And if you'd like to check out my wire work on Etsy, my husband and I specialize in custom wedding cake toppers and funky jewelry. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you the next time.